So today I'm doing something out of my comfort zone in that I'm challenging Jordan Peterson's diet. I think it's a bad idea. I think the carnivore diet is a bad idea. And I'm using Jordan Peterson's name in vain because he's a person of significant influence that's influencing a lot of people around this question of the carnivore diet. Now, I want to start off by saying, first of all, is that I have huge respect and props for Jordan Peterson. We come from the same part of the world in Alberta, and I have a huge respect for the work that he's doing in the world. I'll tell you some of the things I love about what he's doing. I love that he is a voice of wisdom for men stepping into their true masculinity and resolving and healing their wounds. And I love the wisdom that he brings into many topics that have been misconstrued and really mangled by media, sound bites, popular culture, and a lack of critical thinking. So when I make this statement that I think his diet is a bad idea, I want you to know that it comes with a great deal of reverence for who the person is and all the work and the body of work that he's done and the good that he's doing in the world. So I want to tell you why I think it's a bad idea. And before I tell you why it's a bad idea, I want to preface that I am not an angry vegan. In fact, I'm not a vegan and I'm not a vegetarian. I am an omnivore. And so this is not coming about from this attempt to make him a bad person in any way. How he eats, in my opinion, does not make him a bad or good person, okay? But one of the things that I think he is I actually think he's on the path to enlightenment. I think he has a level of enlightenment, which I want to appeal to that side to people who are attracted to his teachings and maybe attracted to trying the carnivore diet as a result of being respecting him as a person. So the first thing I want to say about the carnivore diet is that people are getting results. And I'll tell you why they're getting results, because they're eating one food only. Now, if you have a food that is not triggering autoimmune dysfunction, right, and you only eat that food, you're going to get results. You're going to have diminishing symptoms from your autoimmune disease, and that's a good thing. Now, is it sustainable? No. But getting back to the one food thing is that there are many foods that people can eat that will sustain them nutritionally that won't trigger autoimmune dysfunction. Now, one of the problems with the carnivore diet is it's incredibly hard on the body. It's hard on the kidneys. It's hard for your body to actually process that kind of food. And there are other foods that are actually easier for the body to not only process, but assimilate the nutrients and deal with. So there's so much more out there to explore. Now, do I know if Jordan Peterson's done this one food diet with anything else? I don't know that. I'd be curious to find out. But for those of you who are considering the carnivore diet, because of this, I want you to consider that there are many other foods that you can be trying this with. One of the biggest issues I have around this is that it is entirely environmentally unsustainable for the population to eat like this. And here's what happens in nature. Nature and biodiversity of this planet depends on us all eating a different diet. If we're all eating the same thing, our planet's not set up to do that. And what you're going to find is the people who are able to do this are usually in a higher socioeconomic bracket, right? It's also a certain personality type that it works with. It's usually people who've had so much pain that comes from their inflammation and their autoimmune disease and the dysfunction in their body, that they're so grateful for something that's not triggering it, that they're good at associating the pain with deviating from that path. Okay, so there's a certain personality this is gonna work for, but for the most of the population, it's really a short-term solution to a problem that could be resolved with something that is much more environmentally sustainable. We know that the greenhouse gas emissions and what particularly red meat, which a lot of carnivores are interested in, is creating massive greenhouse gas emissions on the planet. But here's one of the reasons why the carnivore diet is so popular. Beyond the autoimmune conditions that it can actually help clear up, which again, there are plant foods that can do that. Okay, meat's highly addictive. And so you may get a rush and a sense of well-being from the nutrients that are going into your body from the fat and, you know, the iron and all those other things. But you're also getting a rush of highly addictive substances that happen within a beast, particularly a beast of that size. The bigger the beast, the more addictive it is. Okay, I haven't tried elephant to, you know, verify this, but if you look at the hierarchy of nature, which I talk about in the consumption concept, fish, chicken, lamb, beef, as you go up in scale, what I find with people is that when they're given a choice of a smaller beast over a bigger beast, they tend to choose the bigger beast. And it's not just a matter of flavor, it's because there's more addictive substances the bigger a beast. Think about it, naturally occurring hormones. We're not even talking about pharmaceutical drugs or hormones that they're injected with, but natural hormones in the body when you actually eat that as another beast is part of that bloodthirst, you know, something that, you know, actually gives us a bit of a rush in the body. So the socioeconomic factor is that it's expensive to eat good quality beef and meats that don't impact the planet. So either you're going to be eating a lot less meat based on your budget, or you're going to be eating a lot of crappy meat. And that tends to be more the case, is that people, they will start to spend money on meat and realize that eating meat 3+ times a day and the volumes that some people are suggesting ends up meaning that they're eating burgers from fast food places minus the bun and everything else, but they're still eating really substandard kind of meat. And that's going to not only create problems and imbalance in the body, but it creates imbalance and problems on the planet. So here's another piece that I'd love to talk to about the eating of one food and why it actually makes us feel better. So in nature, what happens with plant foods, every plant food produces toxins. Yes, even your beautiful oranges and your broccoli has toxins in it. The plant actually creates toxins to keep predators away, which is its way of actually protecting itself and making it much more likely for it to survive or the species to survive. So what happened in nature with humans, and was a good thing, is that we started to eat. Well, we ate with the seasons. We ate what was produced seasonally. So the earth produced some things at some time of the year, and other times it didn't produce those things. And the great thing about that is that it gave us a variety of not only nutrients, right, but it limited our exposure to any one toxin of one plant. Okay, the only plant you're meant to eat 365 days a year is the plant that grows naturally 365 days a year. In fact, nowadays, with our modern form of agriculture and how we grow things, it's difficult to figure out what actually grows 365 days a year. Think about it. Okay, so limiting yourself to one food increases your likeliness and exposure to any one toxin. So it's a good reason to start to eat a variety of plant foods seasonally, locally, organic, and whole. You know, a lot of the carnivore, the move towards keto and the carnivore and the paleo is really an overcorrection because of our love and addiction to carbs. And when I say carbs, I want to be very responsible in how I use carbs, okay? Because every single plant on the planet is a carbohydrate, okay? So when people are eliminating carbs, most of the time what they're referring to are starchy carbs and grains. So the potatoes, you know, white potatoes, grains, you know, refined carbohydrates and starches that have created a lot of problems within the body. And here's why they've created the problems. In nature tells us what to eat and the quantities to eat it in by how easily it's obtained in nature. So that which is most abundant, we're meant to have the most of. Think about the hierarchy nature of the most of. Air, it's everywhere. It's our most primary nutrient. We can't survive without it. And if anyone wants to be a nitpicker and says, air is not a nutrient, let me tell you, a nutrient is defined by anything required for growth. Try and grow something in your body without air, okay? So on that point, our second most abundant nutrient on the planet is water. 70% of your body in composite is water, 70% of the planet is water. And this is something that makes sense we need on a regular basis, and so we tend to live where we can access water. So the third most abundant source of nutrients that we get that are energizing, nourishing, and protective, okay? And there's a broad spectrum of the protection is in plant foods. There's tens of thousands of phytochemicals. These are the color, flavor, and aroma compounds in foods that are the most powerful substances on the planet for protecting us against disease. So thinking about what is most abundant, nature has a hierarchy even within vegetation. We're meant to be eating more vegetable species than fruit because there are more species of fruit. They grow more seasonally, so they're around for more of the seasons. Fruit tend to be more specific, and usually, more often than not, they only produce fruit once a year. Okay, so there's more variety of these vegetables. Then, if it's harder to obtain in nature, it's nature's way of saying eat less of this. But what nature does is it gives us stronger physiological desires to work hard for that food, which is why there's no obesity in nature. We work off the corresponding amount of energy in obtaining the food, and that works for balance beautifully in nature, but not so good in the supermarket. Because now what happens is we're taking these foods that were most abundant in nature and even more of the things that were harder to obtain in nature, specifically sugar, salts, and fats, which we know we have addictive responses to. We're refining out the nutrients from them, making them even more addictive, and now they're cheap and they're easily available. So what's happening is that nature tells us what to eat and the quantities to eat and by how easily it's obtained in nature and when it's obtained in nature. So that which is harder to obtain in nature, we have less of, and we have to work harder for it. And here's a third category. If you cannot get it in nature, not only is it harmful to the body, it's harmful to the planet. And this is where most of us have been eating for the last 100 years. Okay, refined sugars, oils, salts, grains, and chemicals. It's what I call the lethal recipe. And in the process of refining it and putting it into food, we've made something that was hard to obtain in nature easily obtained. Only now we're not getting the natural version of it. We're getting a refined version that has all the nutrients removed. So your body's eating it and it's saying, feed me more, I'm not getting what I need. And more often than not, it has chemicals and highly refined substances that create toxicity within the body. It creates an imbalance within the body, and it creates this addictive substance that we get hooked on. And so there's no wonder why we're suffering from autoimmune diseases, allergies. There's over 144 diseases and conditions directly connected with sugar alone. Okay, so now put in tens of thousands of chemicals that are in our food, highly refined, and the removal of nature's most powerful substances to nourish, energize, and protect us. And a lot of people are getting sick. So if we start to go back and think, well, what did we eat in nature? One of the things that's really important and no one talks about is that the average hunter-gatherer ate 11 to 15 plant species to every animal species they ate. And not only that, when they did eat an animal species, they ate it in a hierarchy of that which was most easily to obtain. I talk about this in the consumption concept. If you had to source your own food for dinner tonight, what would you choose in a natural environment? Okay? Given a choice between chicken or an omelet for dinner, most people in the Western culture would actually go for the chicken, unless you're a vegetarian or you have an egg allergy. Most people would go for the chicken because it actually is more addictive. Okay? Given the same choice in nature, if you have to go out and source an egg to make your omelet, or catch, kill, pluck, disembowel, bleed, and prepare a chicken, most people become vegetarian. But even the most hardened carnivore would think twice about killing a source of eggs ongoing. Okay, so if you think about it, the hunter-gatherers in the paleo times, they were eating insects, they were eating rodents, they were eating things that were smaller in between the times where they actually had a kill of a large mammal, which was a tribal food. Okay, it took a tribe to actually break it down and deal with it so it didn't actually spoil. If you felt like fillet steak for dinner tonight or prime rib, you didn't just go out and kill a cow. It just wasn't sustainable. And I'll give you an example of a young man that I dealt with, a family who had a rather large cattle business. And at 16, he was suffering from crippling arthritis and autoimmune conditions. He was having fillet steak for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So although the carnivore diet can actually create a lot of benefits in the short term, it's only a matter of time before the long-term effects of ketosis, which is not really how the human species have evolved to actually live. We have evolved, or we were designed to live in harmony with nature and to have this abundance of plant species. The problem is that we've really messed it up with our system. And if this wasn't going out to the public, I'd like to use a much stronger word for that, of how we've actually messed up our food system. And so now we're no longer eating natural foods because they've been grown with chemicals. They've been genetically modified. Then they're processed with chemicals and toxins and heat to remove the macro and micronutrients. And then because those flavor compounds, aroma compounds, and color compounds are removed in the processing and sold off, to someone who actually sells those things in their supplements, they now put in colors and flavors and chemicals and preservatives and more salt and MSG and all these other things into the food that again creates a whole series of other problems. Whereas if we just go back to organic or biodynamic, seasonal, local, organic, and whole, we would solve a lot of those problems and wouldn't need to rely on these foods that are incredibly hard in nature to obtain. Now, a lot of talk is about the carnivore, the primal, man getting his needs met and going right back to nature. Well, we are a species that loves to grow and evolve. And so for those of you who are considering the carnivore diet or the paleo diet, I think that was appropriate for that time in human evolution. But I'm wanting to appeal to your evolved sense, the person in you that wants to grow. Okay, so you can have a primal diet that's based on old ways of actually thinking. But if you do that, I implore you to actually research properly how the primal diet was actually consumed, and that there wasn't just one way, and that they did have 11 to 15 plant species to every animal species that they had, and they had their animal protein in the form of a hierarchy starting with insects. Okay, so that's Primal Man. But one of the things I love about Jordan Peterson's work is that he talks about sacrifice for the greater good of humanity, of families, right? He talks about monogamy being a sacrifice for many men who it would feel really good to them to have several partners, to be polyamorous or polygamous, right? But he has done the research to show that children thrive when there is a monogamous relationship, a primary relationship. So I want to appeal to that same part of you that actually is interested in the greater good. And right now, with the planet as it is, with the population, and where we are environmentally, the greater good is to actually consume in a way that is respectful of nature's hierarchy and that which is sustainable. And eating meat as your sole form of nutrition is not sustainable. There are evolved ways for us to actually observe what happens in nature and to use our brains with nature instead of against nature. Great examples of this are biodynamics. That is using our brain, that's using technology to actually enhance all the powers of nature. Permaculture, another example of it, using our brains to work with nature. So as a person who is seeking growth, who actually wants to do something good for the planet, I implore you to think of beyond what is good for just your body and ask yourself the question, is there another way that I can eat that deals with my autoimmune conditions, that deals with my sickness, that deals with my dysfunctional relationship with food? Is there a way that I can eat that's actually healing not just for me, but for the planet, for the greater good of everyone? And when you can answer that question, when you can find the answers for yourself in a way that is truly altruistic, but ultimately self-serving, I think there's some magic that happens within that, not just for you, for your body, for your life, but for the planet. And that's the question that I think we need to start asking. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up and like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with people you care about that can benefit from this. And join our incredibly supportive Facebook group. And lastly, if you're looking to get sugar-free naturally, follow the links below and find out more about the Sweet Freedom online program.